Hi guys, Travis here with your Sunday school lesson. We will be in First John 2:28 and on down into the third chapter. Legend has it, because the apostles, when they wrote the books of the New Testament, they did not write them with chapters and verses. When you write a letter to your friend, you don't separate it up into chapters and verses, and neither did they. These came along later so that when we're talking about the Bible, we can specifically point to a certain spot and say John 3:16. Oh yeah, that part. I know that part. Legend has it that the guy who put the chapter and verse divisions in there was riding on a horse at the time, and as he was trying to mark divisions, a lot of the divisions as he bounced along on the horse wound up in some pretty weird places. So we have a thought that begins at the end of chapter 2 and goes into chapter 3. This is a letter from John, Jesus' well-loved friend. He was the youngest of the disciples. He was the kid brother of the disciples, and he might have been close to you guys are, school year's over, you guys are freshmen now, most of you, and so I can't call you my bunch of middle schoolers that I have at church anymore. So John might have been 15 or 14, hanging around with his older brother and the other disciples and learning from Jesus, and now he's an old man, and he's writing about back when he was a kid and he was following Jesus and he was learning from Jesus. And we talked a little bit last time about the Antichrist, and that's a big topic, and we only just kind of scratched the surface. But for the purposes of First John is written in very simple language with simple concepts, and so there's no need to get into big ideas and big things. It's just very simple. On the one hand, you have Jesus, and on the other hand, you have Antichrist or anti-Jesus, against Jesus. So, if you love Jesus and you follow Jesus, you're going to love like Jesus. And we're going to find out today that God's plan for you is to become like Jesus. Jesus exemplifies, he is the example of what it means to be a human being that is in a fully functioning relationship with God. People that we are in a relationship with change us. I remember that my dad had a cousin, my second cousin actually, who lived down the street when I was very small. And this cousin turned him on to the game of tennis. And my dad is more of a football kind of guy, but he likes to go and he likes to go play tennis because our cousin David used to take him to go play tennis. Well, the people we have a relationship with change us to some degree, and if we have that relationship with God, and especially since the Bible teaches that Jesus is inside of us, living in us, if you believe in Jesus, He is living inside of you, and you are becoming more like Him, and you'll still be yourself, but you will become more Christ-like because we are selfish and we are squabbling and we're always finding something petty and stupid to fight with each other over. And Jesus isn't like that at all. He cares about other people and he wants to honor God. And so Jesus is turning us into versions of ourselves that are far more like Him. We saw last week you can choose to go with the spirit of Antichrist. You can try to go against all of that, and that's pretty much the side we're all born on. But what God's will for your life is that you become like Jesus. We're going to become children of God, and that's what we read in this verse here. 1 John chapter 2, verse 28, and now, dear children, continue in Him, so that when He appears, we may be confident and unashamed before Him at His coming. Jesus is coming back, and at some point, if you guys really want to know what the Bible teaches about when Jesus comes back, I'm going to be hopefully someday doing a whole series of videos on that, not just for you, but for all ages. But that will be available to you. You've probably heard any number of things. I'm going to try to cut through all the confusion that is out there, but everybody agrees He is coming back, and the Bible teaches that we don't want to be ashamed of how we've been living our lives. When He comes back, we want to be able to hold up our lives and say, look, Jesus, isn't it so cool? Just like when a small child is like, look, watch what I can do. Look at this, look at this. We don't want to be ashamed. We want to be confident. knowing that we did the best that we could and we lived our life for Jesus. Verse 29, if you know that he is right, that everyone who does what is right has been born of him, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. So it's awesome to be a child of God. If you've believed on Jesus, if Jesus has come to live in your heart and soul, you are a child of God, and that is amazing. But there is a downside. We talked about the world earlier. We talked about how you can't love the world and love God. You can't have this wholehearted devotion to the world and have a wholehearted devotion to God because they don't agree. This world is in rebellion against God. But whenever you decide to follow Jesus, that does mean things will get tough because the world is in rebellion against God, and now we're on God's side. So the world is in rebellion against us and everything we stand for. And some people take this a little far, claiming that there's nothing good, always getting in fights with people about stuff. We don't have to get in fights with people. We can speak the truth, and we can love everyone, including our enemies, which is what Jesus told us to do. And God loved us enough while we were enemies to make us his children. So as we become more like God and more like Christ and love like he does, we learn how to love our enemies because he loved us when we were his enemies. Verse 2 of chapter 3, dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known, but we will know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So when Jesus comes back, we are trying to be like him, but someday we really will be like him. All that selfishness and all that petty squabbling and everything will be a thing of the past because Jesus will return and make us more like him. Everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself just as he is pure. And I know many of you have lost friends and family, and I want you to know that if they knew Jesus and they were a part of the family of God, they are doing better now than they ever have. They are living in a world of perfect love, and they themselves have been made perfect. They're not selfish. Some of my deceased relatives were a bit selfish, and sometimes, it wasn't the cuddly, cool, fun grandma that, I named my daughter after. It was some other relative, and they were kind of a pain. Even before they got old and cranky, they were kind of a pain. But if they know Jesus, everyone's just out here doing the best that we can. I'm just doing the best that I can, and sometimes the Lord enters my life and I say something brilliant or I'm really super loving, but it wasn't me. It was the Lord in my life. But someday that's what my whole life will be like. In the next world, I will be walking in that perfect love all the time, and so will you, and so are my deceased relatives that know the Lord, and your deceased friends and family that know the Lord. They are fully like Christ now. God has done that miracle, and that is what we have to look forward to. So you decide to follow Jesus, and he comes to live in your heart, and it's not so much about you deciding that you want to be like Jesus, but God is doing a miracle in you that even when we don't want to be like Jesus, there is the Holy Spirit inside saying, now hold on. That's not of God. That's not something that's going to provide life to you and your friends and family and neighbors. That isn't something that is good for you. That is something destructive. And we have that Holy Spirit inside of us, pulling us in the direction that we should go. And so I want you to pay attention to that leading if you know the Lord. And if you don't know the Lord, you are still at that crossroads. Christ or Antichrist. Selfishness or love. And we want you to fall into the arms of God and embrace his perfect love, not just so you can be loved, but so that you can love others. And I love you guys, and I'm hoping that someday soon we will get to be able to be together in person again. If you don't know, we are having in-person services again if you want to come, and we will be practicing the social distancing and all that good stuff. But it's an option if you can make it on Sunday mornings. But I hope you're making use of these videos and other resources that are on the internet. And I'm going to tell you goodbye for now.